On the afternoon of August 28, 2003, the quiet city of Erie, Pennsylvania, was thrust into the national spotlight by a scene that looked like it came straight out of a Hollywood thriller, except it was all too real. Brian Wells was a 46-year-old pizza delivery man for a small shop called Mamma Mia's. He was known in his neighborhood as friendly, quiet, and dependable. He lived a modest life, never married, and didn't have a criminal record. On that summer afternoon, he went out to deliver 2 pizzas to an address that didn't seem too out of the ordinary, an isolated television transmission tower at the end of a dirt road. But what happened next would baffle investigators and horrify the public. A few hours later, Brian was seen entering a PNC bank in Erie. He wasn't yelling or acting aggressively, he was calm. But what made him impossible to ignore was what he was wearing. A bulky white t-shirt with a handwritten message taped to the front that read, "Guess what? I have a bomb." Around his neck was a thick, locked metal collar with what looked like a time bomb strapped to it. In his hands was a homemade cane fashioned into a shotgun. He handed the teller a note demanding $250,000 in cash. But this wasn't a run-of-the-mill robbery. Wells told the bank employees he had a bomb strapped to his neck and it would explode if they didn't cooperate. The teller gave him just over $8,000, far less than what was demanded, and Brian left the bank. Instead of fleeing, he began a bizarre series of movements around town, allegedly following a set of scavenger hunt-style instructions given to him by his captors. His next stop was a McDonald's parking lot, where he retrieved the next clue. But before he could make it much further, police spotted him and quickly apprehended him in the parking lot of a nearby eyeglass store. Handcuffed and sitting on the pavement, Brian pleaded with officers to understand. He claimed he'd been forced to rob the bank, that people had strapped the device to his neck and warned him it would go off. "It's going to go off," he shouted repeatedly. But officers, unsure whether this was a bluff, kept their distance and waited for the bomb squad. Time was running out. As cameras rolled and dozens of bystanders gathered, a faint beeping could be heard from the device. Then, just before the bomb squad arrived, the device exploded, killing Brian Wells instantly. The footage was broadcast across the nation, and within hours, the case went from a strange local crime to a national mystery. Who would strap a bomb to an innocent man and force him to rob a bank? And more importantly, was he really innocent?
At first, the FBI was unsure whether Brian was a victim or a willing participant. After all, he'd walked calmly into the bank and didn't seem overly distressed. But as agents dug deeper, the story unraveled into a labyrinth of lies, manipulation, and cold-blooded planning. One of the first big clues came from a phone call to Mamma Mia's pizzeria just before the robbery. A man had called in an order for 2 small pizzas to be delivered to a TV tower at the end of a dirt road, a location that turned out to be completely isolated. Investigators concluded this is where Brian was ambushed and forcibly fitted with the collar bomb, which had multiple locks and was booby-trapped to prevent tampering. Near the tower, they found footprints, tire tracks, and remnants of the collar bomb's assembly. But perhaps the most bizarre discovery was the set of instructions found on Brian. Pages and pages of handwritten commands outlining a complex scavenger hunt. The instructions ordered him to rob the bank, retrieve clues from multiple locations, and supposedly earn more time on the device with each completed task. But bomb experts determined that the device was never meant to be defused. The bomb had built-in decoys and traps, designed not to be dismantled, but to explode no matter what. As the FBI began to focus on who could have built such a device and orchestrated such a cruel plan, they zeroed in on a man named William Rothstein. Rothstein was a local handyman, known for his intelligence. He had a reported IQ of 135, and his eccentric personality. Just weeks after Brian's death, Rothstein called 911 and told police he had a frozen body in his garage freezer. That body belonged to James Roden, the boyfriend of Marjorie Deal Armstrong, another Erie local known for her erratic behavior and violent past. Marjorie was a former straight-A student who had once dreamed of being a teacher,
but her life had derailed into chaos marked by paranoia, mental illness, and several suspicious deaths. She was manipulative, extremely intelligent, and dangerous. When questioned by police, Rothstein claimed that Marjorie had killed Roden in a domestic dispute and asked him to help dispose of the body. But investigators soon realized this was no coincidence. Rothstein, Marjorie, and Roden were all connected to the pizza bomber case. Eventually, another man came forward, Kenneth Barnes, a local crack dealer and friend of Marjorie's. Barnes admitted to being involved in the planning of the bank heist. According to him, Marjorie wanted to hire someone to kill her own father so she could inherit his estate, and the bank robbery was meant to fund the hit. When asked why Brian Wells was chosen, Barnes said that Brian was a pushover, someone they thought they could manipulate. There was also evidence that Brian may not have been entirely unaware of the plan. Reports surfaced that he had been seen at Rothstein's house before the robbery. Witnesses claimed he had spoken casually about robbing a bank. However, authorities believe he thought the bomb was fake, that it was all a stunt to make the robbery more believable. They believe that when the real collar was locked around his neck, he realized he had been double-crossed. His death then wasn't just tragic, it was a calculated execution. The collar bomb itself was a terrifying feat of engineering. It had multiple locking mechanisms, fake wires meant to confuse bomb technicians, and 2 pipe bombs that would detonate if tampered with. The FBI described it as one of the most complex homemade explosive devices they had ever seen. It was clear the people behind it were not just criminals, but sadistic and highly intelligent manipulators. In 2007, nearly 4 years after the incident, federal prosecutors finally brought charges. Marjorie Deal Armstrong was indicted for her role as the mastermind. She was convicted in 2010 and sentenced to life in prison plus 30 years. Kenneth Barnes received a 45-year sentence for conspiracy and weapon charges. William Rothstein, who may have played a central role in the plot, died of cancer in 2004 before he could be brought to trial. As for Brian Wells, his legacy remains deeply conflicted. The FBI officially categorized him as a co-conspirator, but acknowledged that he may have been unaware of the full scope of the plan, or that his life would be sacrificed. His family, devastated and outraged, maintains that he was an innocent victim. They insist he was manipulated, coerced, and ultimately murdered by people he barely knew. The case, known forever as the pizza bomber heist, was the subject of endless speculation and media fascination. In 2018, Netflix released a gripping documentary series called Evil Genius, which dug even deeper into the lives and psychology of everyone involved. The show introduced a whole new generation to the case and renewed interest in the still unanswered questions. Was Brian a victim or a willing accomplice? Were others involved who never faced justice? What's clear is that this was no ordinary bank robbery. It was a layered, chilling crime born out of greed, desperation, and madness. It left a man dead, a city in shock, and a nation haunted by the image of a man sitting alone on a parking lot pavement, pleading for help while a bomb ticked down. The pizza bomber heist is a disturbing reminder that sometimes the most horrifying stories are the ones that really happened. The pizza bomber case challenges every notion of good versus evil, victim versus perpetrator. It's a tale of manipulation, mental illness, and a perfect storm of circumstances that ended in tragedy. And while the main conspirators have either died or been imprisoned, the full truth may never be known. Brian Wells' final moments remain one of the most chilling images in true crime history. If you found this case as shocking as we did, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story from Crime Chronicles. What do you think? Was Brian Wells a pawn, a partner, or something in between? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious and stay safe.